My daughter-in-law slept with my husband just a week before we signed the divorce papers. I felt my chest ache, but I kept my face calm, letting silence speak louder than anger. At the lawyer's table, when a document appeared that tried to erase my rights, I smiled and slid my own papers across. That moment was only the beginning of a storm they never expected. Before I share the story, I'd love to know, how are you doing today? The summer air in Georgia carried a heaviness that clung to my skin like damp linen. At 68, I had grown used to the way the evenings held their breath here, the cicadas buzzing like a clock you couldn't turn off. My house sat quiet, though the laughter from neighbors' barbecues floated across the yards. I should have felt at ease, but instead there was a weight pressing down on me, a silence too deliberate. I had lived in this home long enough to know when something shifted. Tonight, it was as if the walls were listening. I rocked gently on the porch chair, my eyes resting on the garden I had tended for decades. The roses swayed, but not in the breeze, almost as though someone had brushed past them moments before. That thought lingered in my mind as the gate creaked open. It was Vera Hollins, my sister-in-law, her steps uneven, her gaze darting anywhere but at me. I knew that look. A woman carrying something too heavy for her tongue. "Evening, Vera," I said, my voice smooth, wrapping itself in calm so she wouldn't hear my pulse. She hesitated, clutching her shawl like it was armor. Then she leaned in, her lips barely moving. "You need to look closer at your own house." The words slid through the air, colder than the iced tea sweating in the glass beside me. My smile stayed in place, though my insides tightened like a knot being pulled. "Closer. What do you mean?" I asked lightly, as though we were gossiping about the weather. But she shook her head, eyes shifting to the street. "I've said enough." I let out a small laugh, masking suspicion with grace. "You never were good at half sentences." "Vera, why stop now?" She pressed her lips together, turned, and left before I could ask again. The garden felt different once she was gone, darker. Though the sun hadn't fully set, I sat there longer, my hand resting on the chair's arm, repeating her whisper like a hymn I didn't yet understand. That night I couldn't sleep. Cornelius, my husband of 40 years, lay beside me with his back turned, snoring faintly. Once as that sound comforted me, the rhythm of a man who had worked hard and come home safe, but recently, it had felt like a wall. His phone lit up on the nightstand, screen turned away, locked tighter than his eyes when I asked simple questions. Cornelius was 72, steady, respected in the community, a man people trusted. I had trusted him too, for longer than I cared to count. I built my days around his rhythm, raising our children, teaching classes, putting food on the table when money was thin. Loyalty had been my language. And yet lately, his had been distance. I thought about Isolde, our daughter-in-law, polished and sharp, always with a new story about her career in public relations. At 32, she moved with the kind of energy that screamed ambition. She wears it like perfume. I had once muttered under my breath, "Too sweet, too heavy," and lingering long after she'd left the room. She had a way of tilting conversations so they landed in her favor, slipping compliments in like sugar only to mask the bitterness beneath. When Cornelia spoke of her, it wasn't with the casual tone of a father-in-law. It was pride mixed with a strange eagerness, as if her approval fed him more than mine ever did. The seed Vera planted that night sprouted quickly in my mind. Every locked phone, every late call, every smile that didn't reach his eyes, suddenly they stood in a row, accusing him in silence. But I didn't confront. Not yet. My mother had taught me that patience was a woman's strongest armor. Better to observe than accuse without proof, she used to say while folding laundry. So I waited, and I watched. A week later, Isolde invited me for tea. Her voice on the phone carried a rehearsed warmth, like an actress repeating lines she had practiced in front of the mirror. I went, not because I wanted her company, but because curiosity tugged harder than fear. Her apartment was spotless, every cushion placed just so, every candle burning in a way that screamed perfection. She greeted me with a smile too wide to be real. "Althea, so glad you could make it," she sang, handing me a cup of chamomile. I sipped carefully, my eyes watching her more than the cup. Small talk floated between us, hollow words that meant nothing. Then she leaned forward, sliding a neat stack of papers across the table. pamphlets, divorce options, alimony charts, legal pathways laid out like a map. My hand froze on the porcelain. "It's time to face what's coming," she said, her voice silky but firm. I looked at her, then at the papers. My heartbeat slowed instead of quickening. That was always my way, calm when others expected fire. Cornelius's handprints were all over this, though he hadn't the courage to face me himself. And here was Isolde, playing lawyer, judge, meneur, and executioner in one. They think I'll panic, I thought. They think silence is weakness. I lifted my eyes to hers and asked gently, "When did Cornelius decide I wasn't needed?" She blinked, mask slipping for half a second. "This isn't personal. Althea, it's practical." And when I continued, voice steady as stone, "Did you become his lawyer?" Her jaw tightened. She shifted in her chair, but quickly recovered with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. I tucked every flicker of her discomfort into memory. Words, glances, tone evidence. I folded it away like letters in a drawer, waiting for the right time. "In my community," I finally said, setting my cup down softly. "Silence has always been the strongest sermon." Her face didn't move, but I saw the flicker in her pupils. She wanted me rattled. Instead, I left her with my calm. I rose, folded the napkin with deliberate care, placed it on the table, and walked out. My steps were steady, each one a statement. They think this was their move, I told myself as the door clicked shut behind me. They don't know the game just began. The morning after that uneasy tea with Isolde, I woke to the thick Georgia heat pressing down on my bedroom like a wool blanket. Cicadas hadn't stopped since dawn, their chorus rattling in my ears as I stared at the ceiling fan cutting slow circles. Vera's whisper clung to me still, but now it was joined by something harsher, the buzz of my phone. Cornelius had texted, "Let's be adults. Meet my attorney today." The address followed, neat and cold, like he'd been rehearsing it. There was no greeting, no good morning, no please. Just a demand dressed as civility. I sat up, slipped on my glasses, and read it twice before my lips pressed into a thin line. "Be adults," he wrote, as if my decades beside him had been childish. I took a screenshot, forwarded it to my private email, and then typed back a simple, "I'll be there." I prepared with deliberate calm. I chose flat shoes, a legal pad, and a slim folder. My wedding ring stayed on, but I turned it inward, a signal to myself. I deleted nothing. I archived everything. "Evidence breathes in silence," I whispered as I closed my front door. The drive downtown was short but heavy. Peachtree Street glared with glass and steel. The law firm's facade shimmered like it wanted to intimidate. But glass can shatter. I reminded myself of that as I walked inside. The receptionist led me to a conference room that looked more like a stage-set shiny table. Leather chairs, bottled water lined with labels facing out. Cornelius sat at the far end, tie knotted with precision, his eyes trained on a spot beyond me. Not once did he look at me as his attorney entered, a woman with a sleek pen she used like a wand, never touching the papers herself. She slid the packet across the table with its tip, her words crisp, standard waiver. "This will streamline the process. Quit claim for clarity. You'll be more comfortable in a condo." Each phrase landed like a paper cut, small, sharp, and designed to bleed pride. I picked up the packet slowly, my voice steady. "Is this your best advice and your final position?" The attorney smiled the way one does at a stubborn child. Cornelius exhaled, relief flickering across his face. I held both their eyes, then began to read aloud waiver of marital rights. Property held solely, no claim to primary residence. My tone was clinical, but inside I filed away every word. I never raised my voice. I didn't give them anger. Instead, I gave them precision, because precision unsettles those who expect you to crumble. I capped my own pen, gathered the copies, and pushed the packet back. "I appreciate the clarity," I said, "but I won't be signing today." The pen that tried to push me out went back to its owner, unused, in the hallway. I asked the receptionist for digital copies. I photographed the first page myself, timestamp clear. My mind whispered, "They want speed, I want accuracy." In the elevator's reflection, I saw not a victim but a woman still standing. That image gave me strength. Outside. The city hummed with midday traffic. I pulled out my phone and called Dahlia Cortez, a name I trusted more than any of theirs. Tomorrow afternoon, I said, voice firm. Yes, 2 o'clock, that evening. I forced myself to attend the neighborhood barbecue. The smoke from ribs and corn filled the air. Folding chairs scattered across lawns. I arrived alone, carrying a plate. Knowing whispers were already following me. Isolde appeared, all in white, her smile too polished, her tone bright enough to sting. Neighbors leaned in when she spoke, and I saw Tariq nearby, shifting uneasily. Althea would be happier in a senior community. She chirped loudly, less stress for everyone. The laughter that followed cut deeper than any paper. But I held my church smile, looking her square in the eye. Bless your heart for worrying about my stress, I replied, especially in my house. The crowd shifted, chuckles dying in throats. A neighbor asked about downsizing. Isolde answered for me. Smooth as butter, it's practically settled. I felt the weight of eyes on me, but I refused to bleed for them. I changed the subject to the potato salad, set my plate down, and excused myself. In private, at the cooler, I caught Tariq alone. Son, I said softly, not looking at him. Silence is not consent. His shoulders stiffened. He opened his mouth but closed it again. I let the words hang, heavy enough to follow him home. Back in my kitchen that night, I placed the lawyer's packet beside my grandmother's cedar box. 2 histories, side by side, their version and mine. I slipped the papers into a new envelope and labeled it their version. My wedding ring lay in the dish, face up this time, watching like a witness. I typed Dahlia's appointment into my calendar. My list of assets and questions grew beside it. At the window, cicadas still sang, but now I heard them differently, like drums before a march. Tomorrow. I whispered to my own reflection, I'll stop being their audience and start building my case. By the time I sat across from Dahlia Cortez, I knew better than to chase comfort. Her office was cool, framed in degrees and certificates, the kind of space designed to assure you before a word is spoken. Still, I held myself steady, hands folded over a slim folder I'd brought from home. I'm not here to decide today. I told her plainly, I need to know my options. Nothing more. She smiled faintly, recognizing the firmness behind my calm. Understood. Then we'll just talk. I gave her the essentials, Cornelius's attorney sliding papers with a pen, Isolde's sharp little remark at the barbecue. The laughter that stung worse than the August heat. No dramatics, just dates, phrases, who stood in earshot. Dahlia listened like a scribe, her pen moving but her gaze on me. Good, she said when I finished. What you've described are tactics to corner you quickly. Waivers, quitclaims they're designed to strip you before you can breathe. You did right not to sign, she explained slowly, in terms even a neighbor of mine could follow. Consultation meant I was free. Retainer meant commitment. Evidence had to be clean, lawfully obtained. Nothing sneaky that could poison a case. I don't want scandal. I said, I want accuracy. Her nod came crisp. Then gather what you can: phone records, text screenshots, bank statements, and names of witnesses. Think of it as building a quilt, piece by piece. I slid across Cornelius's text: be adults. Meet my attorney and a list of neighbors present at the barbecue. She scanned them, then said, there's a private investigator I trust. Public-facing evidence only. You won't need to lift a finger. I didn't commit yet. Give me the list of what to collect. I'll bring you something that speaks louder than gossip. When I rose, she extended her hand. You're not here for drama, she said again, and that's why you'll be effective. Walking out, I knew she was right. The sun pressed hard when I stepped onto Peachtree. My phone buzzed. Merrick Fawcett's voice filled my ear. Dahlia looped in briefly. His tone was clipped, practical. Here are your lanes. He said, public space is safe. Business records fair. Voluntary witnesses, we use them. But no wiretaps, no trackers, no private interiors. One illegal step can spoil everything. I murmured acknowledgement, jotting down quick notes on the back of a receipt. Places they frequent, he asked. Buckhead Cafe, corner of Peachtree, Midtown Bistro, white tablecloths, both familiar. Good. I'll need a timeline. Late returns, card charges, texts. Before sundown if you can. Understood, I replied. Send me your secure link. There was no warmth in our exchange, no need for it. My silence wasn't submission anymore. It was strategy, the place where truth could gather its weight. By late afternoon, Merrick's text arrived, check email. Cafe manager provided footage, public dining area. I opened the link, and there they were, Cornelius and Isolde, seated close, her hand over his. A timestamp flickered at the corner. The video's sound was mostly a hum, but then her voice came through, low, eager. Her house will be ours soon. I sat very still. The air in my kitchen thickened, no tears, no outburst, just the steady beat of my own pulse. I played it again, eyes sharp for detail. Cornelius's cufflink caught the light at 7:43. A server passed with a receipt folder. Their smiles leaned too close. I typed notes for Dahlia venue name, date, clothing, server's pass, receipt timing, audible phrase. Every detail a brick in a wall I would one day stand behind. I saved the file twice, one on a labeled USB, one in a cloud folder. Then I wrote Merrick chain of custody confirmed cafe, manager, you, me. Please draft affidavit. His reply was prompt. They expected me to break. I thought they miscounted. Evening shadows stretched when I walked into the Buckhead Bistro. A longtime server, gray hair pinned back, looked at me with recognition. Are you Mrs. Drexler? I didn't flinch. Yes. She handed me a crumpled slip. This was left last night. I meant to toss it. But the name. It was Cornelius's flourish, his signature looping under a tip circled in pen. The joint card number was clear. Thank you, I said softly, tucking it into my folder. At home. I lined the slip beside the video timestamp 7:43, receipt folder on the table, card charged, her hand over his. The zipper of truth closed snug. I stapled the transaction printout, attached a sticky note, public plus joint card plus house remark. Then I filed it under a divider marked Receipts Public and Financial. That night, my table was spread with papers. I built a ledger on lined sheets, writing dates, venues, witnesses, physical proof. It looked like a quilt stitched from scraps of betrayal, but it was mine. Every square inch lawful. I sent Tariq a short text. When you're ready to hear facts, I'll be ready too. His silence in return didn't sting. It was just another piece waiting to fit. In the hallway. Family portraits lined the wall. I stopped. Something was different. One photo, me in the center, wasn't missing, but moved, shifted out of its place. They were rewriting the story, even on the walls. I whispered to the empty house. You're trying to erase me, but you've only made the outline sharper. By morning, I knew. I'd see how far that erasure had already spread. I woke earlier than usual. The kind of dawn where light sneaks in sideways through thin curtains and lays across the hallway like a blade. I walked past the gallery of frames that marked the history of this family birthdays, graduations, anniversaries. It was supposed to be a wall of permanence. But I knew before I got close that something was wrong. The photo that used to anchor the middle was missing. In its place hung a newer print, one where I was shoved to the far left, my face almost cut by the frame. I leaned closer. Another shot had been swapped in same family gathering, but this version was darker, my smile half hidden in shadow. I didn't rearrange anything. Instead, I reached for my phone and snapped photos, making sure the timestamp was clear. My fingers brushed one of the frames. The hook was still warm, like someone had just touched it. On the glass, faint smudges caught the light, fresh fingerprints. I whispered to myself, "Document, don't rage." That was the rule. I filed each image carefully into a folder on my phone marked Evidence House. I rehearsed one sentence in my head, letting it sharpen. Do not curate my history in my house, and that was all I would need. Cornelius was already at the kitchen table, his coffee steaming, newspaper spread as though the morning was ordinary. I carried the cropped photo in, laid it flat between us. Who changed the wall, I asked, voice calm but heavy with intent. He didn't blink. Tidying up. Thought the new ones looked better. Stronger composition. I leaned on the counter, letting silence hang long enough to weigh on him. Then I said the line I had prepared. Slow and deliberate. Do not curate my history in my house. The words landed. He cleared his throat, shifting in his chair. You'll be moving soon. Althea, we're just getting ahead of it. I pulled out my notepad, flipped it open, and wrote his words down verbatim. I wanted them preserved, not floating. You'll find, I said evenly, that any future changes require my written consent. That's not up for discussion. He sighed but didn't argue further. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Tariq's name. I had texted him earlier, photos were altered. I have timestamps. We'll speak when you're ready. His reply now was just 2 words, Mom. Please, when I let it rest. His discomfort was its own evidence. By mid-morning, the mail slid through the slot. One envelope caught my eye, Magnolia Mutual. Bold letters promising welcome. My chest tightened. I hadn't applied for anything. Inside was a life insurance packet, complete with policy number, coverage amount, and an automatic premium draft from our joint account. The beneficiary, Isolde Rankin. I didn't waste a second. I dialed the fraud line, put the call on speaker, and gave my verification. Date of birth, last 4 digits. Security question. The representative read from the screen. Application submitted online. IP address unrecognizable. An e-signature that didn't match mine. Premium scheduled but not yet processed. I did not apply. I said, making my voice clear for their recording. I did not consent. I am reporting identity theft. I asked for a fraud hold, a case number, and a secure email where I could receive the application file and the IP log. I repeated the rep's name and time out loud, writing them down. When the email arrived, I forwarded it directly to Dahlia with the subject line, Fraudulent Policy Beneficiary Isolde Rankin Cornelius Proximate. Then I copied myself. Lesson I wanted etched for anyone listening in my mind when fraud touches your name. Paper first, feelings later. By afternoon, I sat across the screen from Dahlia, showing her the insurer's email, the crop wall photos, and the case number. She nodded once. Good change, she said. Now, here's your next move. File a police report for identity theft, notify the state insurance commissioner, place fraud alerts with credit bureaus, move your income to a separate account and lock the joint one. Her instructions were clinical, sharp, and Althea, do not mention this policy to anyone but me. Let the documents do the talking. We scheduled a meeting for tomorrow. She promised Merrick would be there too, weaving everything into a timeline. Before we ended, she leaned closer to the camera and said, You are not powerless. You are documented. I wrote that sentence in thick ink across the top of my notes. When evening fell, I went back to the hallway. I restored the center photo to its rightful place. This time, I installed a discreet camera facing the gallery, perfectly legal in my own home. I slipped the altered duplicate print into a clear sleeve, labeled it with today's date exhibit crop photo beside the frames. I left a handwritten note, no changes without my consent. Althea, I took a picture of it pinned there, evidence layered on evidence. That night, I placed the fraudulent policy packet inside my grandmother's wooden box, where her letters and recipes still lived. A reminder that memory and defense belong side by side. I turned the key in my bedroom door. Whispered into the quiet, tomorrow, they'll learn moving me out requires a key I never planned to hand over. I walked into Dahlia Cortez's office with a folder pressed against my chest, the words their version written bold across the cover. Inside lay the waiver, the quitclaim, and every attempt they had made to push me into silence. Dahlia didn't bother with small talk. She looked me dead in the eye and asked, What outcome do you want 6 months from now? Her question sliced through the fog. I answered as steady as I could. I want my home. I want the truth out in daylight. And I want my dignity intact. No screaming matches, just evidence. Dahlia leaned back, folded her hands. Then let's start by making me your attorney of record. I nodded, sliding the retainer across. She read through the packet Cornelius's lawyer had pushed at me and circled phrases in red waiver of marital rights. Quit claim deed, comfort in relocation. She tapped her pen. This is predatory, and it reeks of coercion. Within the hour, we had a plan written on a yellow pad. First, an immediate letter to opposing counsel, no signatures, demand full disclosures, and stop the intimidation games. Second, she prepped me for tomorrow's mediation. Say little, but when they slip, make them repeat it, and never accept. This is too complex for you. She drafted 3 lines for me to carry in my purse like scripture. Please repeat that for the record. I will review with my attorney. Send it in writing. Merrick Fawcett joined by phone, his voice smooth as granite. He confirmed sworn statements would be pulled from the cafe manager and the bistro server, their testimony pinned down with certified copies. Evidence wasn't gossip now. It was a wall being built brick by brick. By the time Dahlia printed the certified letters, one for Cornelius, one for Isolde, I felt my back straighten. The words forbade lock changes, required notice for any alterations, and demanded Isolde stop her public performances at my expense. Dahlia slid them into envelopes and said, "Let the post office carry your boundary for you." At the lobby mail counter, I pressed my thumbprint across the certified slips and kept the green cards safe in my wallet. A paper trail as undeniable as my own name. For a moment, I stood in the sunshine and let myself breathe. I texted Tariq, notifying counsel is not war, it's weather. He started typing, then stopped. I watched the dots vanish. Silence still counted, but now I kept score differently. Driving home, I rehearsed tomorrow's mediation phrases, my voice steady against the hum of traffic. I stopped at a florist, bought a bundle of sunflowers, and placed them in the hallway vase beneath the restored family photo, bright proof that I hadn't been cropped out. But when evening fell, the real test waited at my own front door. I slid my key into the lock, twisted, and it jammed. I tried again, firmer this time, but the metal resisted, grinding against something new. I moved to the side door. Same block. The garage also sealed. Someone had replaced the cylinders. I froze, then pulled out my phone. I took close-up pictures of each lock, time-stamped. Then I filmed a clip of my key failing to turn, my voice calm as I spoke the date and time aloud. Proof mattered more than fury. I called non-emergency police, reported a potential lockout at a marital residence, and asked for an incident number. When the officer's name came through, I wrote it down. Then I texted Dahlia Locke's altered incident ####. Her reply came quick. "Stay put. Do not leave the porch. I'm calling their counsel now." A neighbor across the street offered me a folding chair. I accepted her seat, but not her sympathy. I sat beneath my own porch light, scribbling notes as if I were doing homework, not waiting to be let into the house I already owned. An hour later, Dahlia forwarded a message from opposing counsel, no intent to exclude, just a security update. Dahlia's reply was sharper. "Client requires immediate access or we file for a restraining order." I sat still, cardigan tight across my shoulders, sunflowers at my feet. I looked like any grandmother holding flowers, but I knew I was holding ground. The knob turned at last. Voices hissed on the other side. I stood, lifted my certified mail receipts, and spoke through the door. "Access now, or I'll see you in court at 9. A deadbolt clicked, but the chain stayed. The door opened only an inch, just enough for me to see the shadow of hesitation inside. I arrived at the Fulton County Mediation Center before the sun had burned off the morning haze. My small script card sat tucked inside my notebook, 3 sentences written bold like a lifeline. "Please repeat that for the record. I will review with my attorney. Send it in writing." I whispered them once under my breath, the way my grandmother used to recite hymns for courage. The waiting room was cool, but I chose a chair near the door where I could feel a trace of airflow. I texted Dahlia. In the room, calm, she answered with a thumbs up and a single reminder: "Fewer words, more weight." On my lap rested the binder I'd built piece by piece. Tabs glared back at me. Receipts, wall photos, policy fraud, statements. The USB pouch stayed zipped, a sealed weapon waiting for the right summons. When the mediator entered, I nodded, noting the rules but saying nothing. Cornelius walked in stiff as oak, eyes glued to the opposite wall. Isolde followed, her perfume slipping in ahead of her, her throat clearing as if rehearsed. I wrote the date and time at the top of my pad. Today wasn't for emotions, it was for accuracy. Their lawyer started quickly, his voice smooth as if he delivered this line 100 times. "We're seeking to streamline Mrs. Grigsby will transition out of the residence within weeks." I raised my eyes, calm but sharp. "Please repeat that for the record." He blinked, then said it slower, "Mrs. Grigsby will transition out of the residence within weeks. The home is better suited to Mr. Drexler's needs." I wrote each word, deliberate strokes. Isolde leaned forward, smile pressed thin. "We've already planned contractors. It's compassionate to move her somewhere with the right support." I tapped my card once, kept my voice even. "Send it in writing." Then to the mediator, "I will review with my attorney." Their lawyer slid a new sheet across, nearly identical to the waiver I'd rejected before. I laid my palm flat on it, then pushed it back. "Not today." Instead, I requested disclosures, mortgage status, deed, trusts, utilities. Provide them within 10 days, I said. For the record, the mediator looked at me and nodded, marking it down. He called for a caucus, separate rooms. I left with my binder neat, breath even, in the hall. I texted Dahlia, they said the week's line out loud. Near the water cooler, Isolde tried her next act. She glanced around for witnesses, then let her eyes glisten just enough to catch the light. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she whispered, then louder. I've tried to help you. I stood straight, kept my tone plain. No audience today. She tilted her chin, adjusted her voice into pity. Think of Tariq. He can't live in this tug of war. I met her gaze. He can live with the truth when he hears all of it. She let a single tear fall, carefully placed. I never wanted this. She sighed. I stepped aside to let a staffer pass. If you need to perform, the room is that way. I'm here to document. Her eyes narrowed, tears drying faster than they'd come. Back in the room, their lawyer repeated the timeline. Within weeks, not without full disclosures and acknowledgement of my rights, I said, my voice steady. I mentioned the fraudulent policy by name, gave the case number, but held the folder shut. Evidence doesn't need shouting, it needs timing. He suggested a condo, ready immediately. I answered, send the proposal in writing with every cost attached. Then I closed my notebook. Today's goal was to hear your position clearly. I have... The mediator scheduled a follow-up once disclosures arrived. I wrote the date down, stood and left. In the elevator, I texted Dahlia again. They stayed on script. I stayed on plan. By the time I reached home, Tariq's car was parked at the curb, engine off, windows rolled down. He looked like a boy again, caught between loyalties too heavy for his shoulders. I carried my binder past him, set it on the table under the restored photo, then turned back. I won't ask you to pick, I said softly. I'll ask you to listen when it's time. He nodded, eyes wet, hands buried deep in his pockets. From the porch, I saw the curtain twitch. Cornelius and Isolde watching, measuring. I let them. I propped the door open a few inches longer than usual, letting the air and my presence fill the house. That night, I knew one truth: the fight wasn't about leaving. It was about erasure. The sun had barely climbed when I stepped out to the driveway and found the Oak Glen Neighborhood Monthly folded neat as a church bulletin. Across the cover, smiling broad and smug, were Cornelius and Isolde, standing on the steps of my house. The headline read, Visionaries Revive a Legacy Home. I carried it to the kitchen table like it was evidence fresh from the scene of a crime. Red pen in hand, I circled their quotes, our home. She'll be moving soon, every phrase that painted me invisible. For decades I tended that garden, painted those shutters, polished those floors. Now, in glossy print, I was a ghost. I didn't rage. Instead, I dated the margin, slipped the issue into a clear sleeve, and labeled it S9 Puff Piece Erasure. Then I photographed it with timestamps. My house, my face erased, but my record airtight. I texted Dahlia, they published it. Her reply was swift. Save the PDF. I'll handle the editor. That paper wouldn't become my obituary. It would become Exhibit A. I drafted my own email to the editor. Plain and sharp, I pointed out the inaccuracies, attached proof of occupancy and marriage, and wrote, any reference to my displacement is disputed and under counsel. The editor sent back a polished apology that said nothing. We relied on sources. I forwarded it to Dahlia, who promised a legal letter within the hour. Corrections would come, on my counter. The new sleeve sat beside the others, S15 for the altered photos, S6 for the fraudulent policy, different attacks, same story removal. I brewed coffee and steadied my hands. That binder was heavier by the day, but it kept me upright. The next battle wasn't ink, it was money. I opened my laptop to check the joint account. The screen blinked me out twice. On the third try, a message appeared, primary contact updated. My stomach dropped. I called the bank, the rep said calmly. Mr. Drexler requested suspension of online access for security. I answered, I am Mrs. Drexler on a marital account. Do not remove my access. She told me to come in with ID. I drove straight to the Midtown branch, binder riding shotgun like a trusted partner. Inside, I waited my turn, number ticket in hand. At the desk, I laid out my driver's license, a copy of the marriage certificate, and the police report from the lock change incident. My voice stayed level. I want the audit log. Who changed my access? When and from what number the banker tapped keys? Then printed a sheet. The log showed a call from Cornelius's phone, requesting a freeze to prepare for condo transfer. I asked for a stamped copy and requested my credentials restored immediately. I signed an affidavit, reopened access, and flagged fraud across the account tied to the policy mess. Then I opened a new individual account and routed my income there, away from their hands. Before I left, I requested 3 months of certified statements, Buckhead Bistro dinners, cafe tabs, every cent evidence dressed proper. Paper footprints never lie. For anyone listening, banks may smile, but logs don't. Always ask for the logs. By mid-afternoon, a white contractor van idled outside my house. 2 men with clipboards approached. "We're here for pre-renovation measurements." One said. I stepped onto the porch, phone already in my hand. No entry without my written consent. He held up a paper with a scribbled signature that wasn't mine. I photographed it, along with the van plates. "Whose name authorized this?" He muttered, "Cornelius." I gave them a choice. "You were sent on a bad errand. Leave now before police make it official." They backed away, confused, and I filed the photos in a new sleeve, contractor attempt no entry. Merrick replied to my text minutes later. One worker might give a statement. More proof. Inside, I posted a notice by the door, occupant does not consent. Contact counsel before entry. I snapped another photo, date, time, line drawn. That evening, the glossy magazine lay beside the bank logs, the house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. My phone buzzed with a push alert HOA email announcing Wellness and Heritage Night, hosted by Cornelius and Isolde at their revitalized residence. I opened my calendar and typed in the date, title correction night. Beneath it, 3 bullets, trust clause recap, occupancy documents, receipts with matching timestamps. Then I sent Tariq a message: "When the truth is ready, you'll hear it all at once. Come if you want the whole picture." He read it, but silence stayed his reply. I placed the binder on the hallway table beneath the restored family photo. My porch light glowed steady, brighter than any glossy crown they could print. They booked my house for a show. I planned the facts that would end it. I arrived an hour before the HOA event, my house already humming with someone else's plans. A banner draped across the porch, Wellness and Heritage Night, like they had been gifted authority. I didn't rip it down. I set my own stage instead. By the entry, a small sign read "Event photos and audio may be captured for personal archive" on a card table. I laid bottled water and a neat stack of handouts labeled Occupancy Notice, Home History Timeline, and Council Contact. Quiet weapons, waiting. Inside, Isolde floated with eucalyptus branches, arranging vases like she owned the oxygen. Cornelius toyed with the dimmer switch, lowering the lights as though mood could erase ownership. I stood still, in flats and a navy sweater, my grandmother's pin steady on my collar. In my tote rested the binder tabs for receipts, affidavits, deed summary, insurance fraud, tools, not trophies. Neighbors drifted in, and every greeting was Althea. They remembered. They hadn't been trained to forget. I smiled, said welcome, and let my house remind them who had turned its key for decades. The HOA president tapped a glass, and the show began. Isolde's voice rose first, full of charm rehearsed in mirrors. "We're revitalizing a legacy home for wellness, for community." Her manicured hand gestured toward my hallway wall, the same one she had edited with scissors and shadows. Cornelius followed with his updates: contractors, pallets, safer access. Every word was a blade disguised as kindness. I felt the room tilt, sympathy collecting where lies were polished. Then came my invitation to say a few words. I stood, not rushed, and thanked the neighbors for coming. I placed one occupancy notice on the coffee table. Black ink, bold letters, current resident Althea Grigsby. Changes require written consent. I looked at the HOA president. "Would you please read the first line out loud?" He did. The sentence cut through the perfume and the pretense. I gestured to the family photo I had restored to center place. 4 generations of my family have lived here. That truth remains tonight. Isolde's smile tightened. We're helping her transition. If that were accurate, I answered, there would be signed consent. There is not. I reached for a thin folder marked Public Venue Evidence. On top lay the cafe manager's affidavit details of the footage, the timestamp, the phrase. Below it, a certified transcript. I asked the president to read the highlighted line aloud. Her house will be ours soon. His voice wavered. The room stilled. I said, this evidence was captured lawfully in a public setting. It has been sworn and documented. No drama, no raised voice, just fact. From my tote, I played a clipped audio file, 7 seconds only. The cadence of betrayal filled the air just long enough. Isolde gasped. That's edited out of context. I had tapped the affidavit signature, then laid down the restaurant receipt stamped with the matching time. Evidence doesn't blink. The neighbors shifted. Eyes moved between the paper, me and the couple painted in the glossy magazine. For the first time, the silence leaned my way. The door opened again, and my son Tariq stepped inside, still in his work boots, sweat-darkened collar. His eyes searched the room like he'd walked into a play and didn't know his role. He scanned the occupancy notice, then the affidavit, then the receipt. His shoulders dropped not in defeat, but in recognition. I said, steady, when you're ready. We'll go through every line together. Isolde's performance shifted, tears clinging as she pleaded. Tariq, she's making a spectacle. He shook his head. No, Mom is making a record. That one sentence cracked the room open. A couple slipped away from the contractor's sign-up clipboard near the door. Others folded their arms. Waiting, Tariq asked. Did you sign anything saying you'd leave? No. I told him, and I won't. Not without dignity and safety. He nodded once, a bridge rebuilt in silence. Cornelius stepped forward, his smile stiff as cardboard. Let's not confuse folks with legalese, and clarity is not confusion, I said, handing the HOA president another sheet home history timeline. Years of taxes, repairs, mortgage payments in my name. He read parts aloud, and neighbors murmured. Isolde dropped her tone to syrup. We only want her comfortable. Then to a neighbor, whispering sharp, she forgets things. I didn't dignify her with my eyes. I answered to the room. Tonight, I asked only that truth be read aloud. I closed my binder, slid it under my chair, and thanked the guests. The fight wasn't to humiliate, it was to anchor the truth in paper no one could burn. When the last neighbor left, Tariq lingered on the porch. He studied the small sign I'd posted, then the untouched stack of handouts. Mom, he said low, is there really an insurance policy with her name on it? There was, I replied. It's under fraud investigation now. His breath left sharp, like a nail pulled from wood. His eyes darted to the door where Cornelius and Isolde whispered behind glass. I need to take my key back from him, Tariq said finally. The porch light hummed above us, bright against the dusk. Before he could act, the mail slot rattled, and a thick certified envelope slid across the floor inside. The envelope sat heavy in my hands, still warm from the slot where it slid across my hardwood floor. I carried it into the kitchen, laid it flat, and traced the embossed seal with my thumb. Midtown Bank, Compliance Division. The kind of letter folks dread, but this time, it hummed like a reversal. I tore the seam slow, smoothed the folded sheets across my kitchen table. Their language was crisp, account changes reversed, access restored, audit in progress, a hold placed on all outbound transfers beyond a certain limit. And then, blessed detail, a full log of who requested the updates, complete with call timestamps and operator IDs. Cornelius's name hung like a watermark in black ink. Paper trails can be walked back, I whispered to myself. Underlining reverted to original primary email phone. This wasn't mercy, it was record. The phone rang. A compliance officer confirmed the letter. Scheduled my statement for the next morning. I read calmly from my notes the lock change police report, mediation quotes, the timeline of attempts to erase me. When I hung up, I scanned everything to Dahlia Cortez and Merrick Fawcett, subject line bank reversal plus corroborating timeline. I attached the HOA puff piece, the photo of yesterday's contractor work order, exhibits multiplying, stories narrowing. By late morning, Dahlia called with iron in her tone. Althea, I filed for an emergency occupancy order. Judge is reviewing now, not 2 hours later. A sheriff's deputy knocked at my door. His brown uniform held authority that made the air in my porch still. He read from the folded notice in his hand, maintain the status quo of the marital residence. No lock changes, no dispossession until hearing. Case number clear as daylight. Cornelius appeared behind him, chin tight. Isolde tried whispering it was a misunderstanding, but the deputy cut her short. Save it for the judge, ma'am. I sat on the porch with my clipboard, cardigan wrapped close. I wrote the case number across the top of my notes, the ink pressing deep enough to score the paper. I texted Tariq, house protected pending hearing. You're safe to visit any time. His reply was quick thumbs up emoji, followed by, proud of you. Mom, inside? I could hear Cornelius's footsteps pacing. The deputy's car pulled away, leaving silence like a verdict. Not long after, Merrick sent a message. Found it, memorandum of trust recorded at county years back, certified copy en route. The document arrived by scan-embossed seal, clerk's signature, and lines that cut through their puff pieces like gospel. Restrictions on occupancy and transfer. Binding the house to my family trust. My name inked in the soil itself. I printed 2 copies, one slid into the courthouse packet. One sat on my hallway table beneath the restored family photo. 4 generations, now legally bound in ink, no glossy article could rewrite. With the copy in hand, I emailed the HOA editor who had painted Cornelius and Isolde as visionaries. My message was measured correction requested. Trust memorandum attached. Acknowledgement of my current residency required. Their reply was clipped but firm. Correction will run online today. Print in next issue. I screenshotted it, sent it to Dahlia. Small victories are still victories. The afternoon mail brought another certified envelope. Magnolia Mutual. My breath caught before I slid it open. The letter confirmed cancellation of the fraudulent policy listing Isolde as beneficiary. Premiums flagged. The matter referred to the State Attorney General for further review. They invited me to provide supporting evidence. I forwarded every Thread Cafe affidavit, contractor photos, HOA notice. I underlined the assigned case number in blue pen and slid the letter into a fireproof envelope. Some papers deserve harder shells. For a moment, I sat with my tea, letting my hands stop shaking. Not triumph, just process. As Maya Angelou once said, you may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. I repeated the words like a bomb. Evening crept in. Isolde posted online about elder transitions and community safety. I took screenshots, timestamped them, and filed them under public statements. Cornelius prowled the hallway with his phone pressed tight to his ear, his whisper rising whenever he passed the corkboard. On it, the TRO order hung clipped beside the family calendar. I caught his eyes lingering there, reading the lines that kept me in. Tariq arrived as the light dimmed. He walked straight to the kitchen, key ring in hand. One brass key gleamed alone. He set it on my table. This belongs to the person who pays the taxes, he said, voice steady. Before I could answer, another knock rattled the door. A process server stood with subpoenas for Cornelius and Isolde papers tied to the AG inquiry and the bank's audit. The stack grew taller. Evidence layered itself like bricks in a wall. Tomorrow, that wall would stand in a courtroom. The courthouse always smells faintly of dust and varnish, as though truth and time soak into its wood. I walked in with Dahlia Cortez at my side, my binder pressed flat against my hip. Tabs peeked out like bookmarks in a well-used Bible. Tariq sat a few benches behind me, hands folded, eyes steady on me like a son finally remembering his mother's strength. Cornelius Drexler and Isolde Rankin swept in with folders large enough to be props. They whispered rehearsed lines, their glances darting toward the gallery as if applause might rise from strangers. The judge called our case, and the room stilled. I stood when my name was spoken, answered firmly, present. My sleeve brushed the binder tab marked S11. The court reporter bent over her machine, ready to capture every breath. Dahlia leaned close, murmured, "Stay steady. They'll overplay." She was right. In these halls, patience becomes its own kind of weapon. Dahlia rose first, requesting judicial notice of the certified trust memorandum, Exhibit 1. The judge nodded, flipping the seal with care. Dahlia read aloud, "No occupancy change absent trustee consent." Then, with his eyes sharp as flint, the judge turned to Cornelius. "Do you have evidence of consent?" Cornelius opened his mouth, clumsy words tumbling. "We had verbal," the gavel tapped once. "Verbal does not void written record." Isolde shifted beside him, shuffling her stack. Their playbook hadn't rehearsed this blow. I felt my spine lengthen, my silence strong. Records outlast rhetoric. I didn't need to fight. The ink was already fighting for me. Then Dahlia produced the emails, printed, highlighted, stapled in order. The subject line alone cut through the air transition strategy, sent weeks before mediation. The words leapt from the page. "Once she's served Isar. We move utilities." Another line policy already shifted. The judge scanned them silently, then read aloud. "Ensure she signs under pressure." His voice lingered over the phrase. "Explain this," Cornelius sputtered. "Taken out of context," Isolde chimed in. "It was just draft notes." Dahlia's reply came sharp as a nail-striking wood draft notes sent through active accounts. Time-stamped, copied to a contractor. That is planning. The gallery rustled, neighbors whispering, some shaking their heads. Tariq's hand gripped the pew rail behind me. I let out a measured breath. As I've always told myself, arrogant people leave trails they believe their lies can outrun the paper. But paper is patient. The judge leaned forward, voice firm. "Mr. Drexler, were you complicit in attempting to dispossess your wife against recorded trust terms?" Cornelius flushed, his voice rising. "This whole court is biased. She's manipulating." The gavel cracked. "Answer." "Sir." Cornelius slammed his folder shut, papers spilling as he stormed down the aisle. "I won't be humiliated." His words bounced against the walls, but his footsteps echoed louder. The bailiff followed to the door, ensuring he left. The judge shook his head. "Flight is not testimony. Let the record show respondent failed to answer a material question." Isolde sat frozen, shuffling her notes. Color draining as though the stage lights had gone out. I remained still, binder closed in my lap, calm as its own performance. Dahlia rose again. "Your Honor, alongside TRO compliance, we filed a counterclaim for fraud damages, false insurance policy, attempted dispossession, and financial tampering. We submit the insurer's cancellation letter, the bank's reversal, and the HOA correction." The judge accepted the stack, each page pressed under the court seal. He set a date for damages hearing and warned Isolde directly of possible Attorney General coordination. From behind me, Tariq whispered, "This is the turn." I nodded, not looking back. Hope had crept into his voice, and that alone was victory enough for the morning. The hallway afterward felt lighter, as though the building itself exhaled. Dahlia handed me the minute order TRO upheld, damages hearing scheduled. Isolde passed in dark sunglasses, lips pursed. She muttered near my shoulder, "This isn't over." Tariq stepped forward, steady, quiet. "It is for you." I tucked the certified trust memorandum back into my binder. Its weight more than paper, it was anchor. "Shield, sword," I whispered to myself. Paper tells truth long after lies fade. The knock came after midnight, soft but steady, like someone afraid the sound itself might break. I opened the door to my sister's eldest, eyes rimmed red, clutching a thick envelope. "Auntie said this was yours all along," she whispered. I took it gently, led her into the hallway light. Inside was no check, no new weapon, just a faded church fan with my grandmother's handwriting, an old savings passbook ledger showing the first tax payments on the house, and a folded note that read, "We keep what we take care of." My throat tightened. I remembered Saturdays on this same porch, my grandmother drilling me to sign my name straight. "Steady. Steadiness," she said. "Ain't a mood. It's a habit." I breathed into that memory until the sting in my chest leveled into calm. My phone buzzed. "Tariq, you good?" "Ma," I answered, "I'm grounded." He sent back a heart emoji and sleep. "Tomorrow we file the next stack." I set the fan into my binder, not as magic but as lineage, turned off the lamp and let sleep have me. Morning, coffee in hand. Inbox pinged with Bonnie Slate's name, the HOA editor. She'd published a correction and apology. In bold, the house was protected by a recorded trust. The earlier article, she admitted, implied an upcoming transition that was inaccurate. She listed amendments like bullets citing the trust memorandum. Clarifying residency status? Striking Cornelius and Isolde's stewardship? I sipped slow, letting vindication settle without gloating. Neighbors texted soon after. One offered a casserole. Another said she'd point her spare Ring camera toward my walkway. A retired nurse volunteered to be present if they try anything. I saved each message like receipts of solidarity. I screenshotted the correction. I archived the link and emailed Dahlia and Merrick for the case file. Practical note, I told myself, ask for corrections in writing. Reputation has a ledger. 2. Out front, a neighbor waved. Miss Althea, that house feels right with you in it. I smiled back. Feels right with me, too. By midday, I sat across from Reverend Lyle Carson in the church annex. He slid a packet of minutes across the table. The board had voted to pull Isolde's Family Transition Fund appeal from the calendar. Their notes were plain concerns about misrepresentation, undue influence, and protecting the dignity of long-standing members. Reverend looked me in the eye. We don't do dog piles, we do daylight. I asked for a certified copy. He nodded, understanding I needed evidence, not just sympathy. As I left, I thought about the difference between punishment and consequence. Punishment is heat, it burns quick. Consequence is light, it shows what was already there. I texted Tariq church platform withdrawn. Keep receipts organized. He replied, already printing tabs. By late afternoon, Deputy Hargrove and a bailiff pulled up curbside. In their hands, a 72-hour vacate order granting me exclusive occupancy pending hearing. Sheriff standby authorized for enforcement. Cornelius tried one last plea on the porch. Just a week. Althea, let me figure things out. The deputy read the paper clear, maintain status quo. Bags only, no fixtures, no interference. Isolde raised her phone. Filming, elder abuse, she muttered. The deputy's voice cut flat, ma'am. The order protects Miss Grigsby. Save commentary for counsel. I held out a bowl by the door. Your keys can sit here, or the deputy can take them. Your choice. Cornelius hesitated, jaw tight, then let one brass key clink into the bowl. Practical habit, I'd already printed an inventory of community versus separate property. I told them a neutral pickup window for personal items would be arranged with sheriff present. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're guardrails. The deputy taped the notice to my door. Bold letters, simple truth. Tariq stood beside me, quiet as a wall. Evenings stretched long. I watched Isolde call around for rentals, heard pending investigation more than once from the tinny speaker. A rideshare idled, then pulled away. Cornelius asked if I'd loan him money. I handed him a printed list instead: shelters, a legal aid hotline, 2 extended stay motels that take cash. He scoffed. Isolde glared. Neither touched the page. I folded it once, left it on the porch rail, and went back inside. Mercy is clean when it has edges. I locked the door, softly punctuation, not slam. Dahlia texted enforcement clock started. Breathe, hydrate. We're nearly there. I set my grandmother's fan back on the hallway table. Some houses are kept by deeds, others by patience. Night settled again. Merrick's email buzzed with a draft stipulation for return of trust-connected items. I typed one word back, approved. Tariq sorted my binder tabs. You always told me quiet can be a sentence. He said, and a verdict. I answered. We both laughed, tired but real. Then a text flashed from an unknown number. You'll be sorry, I screenshotted, forwarded to Dahlia, deleted the thread. I set an early alarm for the 72-hour mark. Everything logged, everything lawful. And as I turned off the lamp, the house creaked softly as if it had decided to keep me. Dawn painted the porch pale gold when Deputy Hargrove rolled up, patrol car idling low. He checked his watch, tapped the posted order, and spoke steady. Ma'am, we're at time bags only. No fixtures, no documents. We'll make this orderly. His tone carried the weight of 100 such mornings. Cornelius wheeled out 2 scuffed suitcases, handles frayed. He tried to slip a framed photo in a small safe into a tote. The deputy shook his head, voice clipped, not on the list. I raised my binder, finger tracing the line item, no art, no safes. He set them aside. Jaw tight, Isolde argued, eyes flashing. Joint marital equity means half this house. I looked her square. This house lives inside a recorded trust. We live outside your story. The keys came next. Deputy photographed the handoff. Tariq logging serial numbers against our tabs. A rideshare pulled up, then pulled off when told no furniture could ride. Their suitcases sat on the curb, zipper pulls catching light like tiny mirrors. Paper had spoken louder than shouting ever could. By late morning, I was back at the courthouse. Dahlia laid our stack before Judge Melrose trust memorandum, church board minutes, HOA correction, and the 72-hour enforcement log. The judge read briskly, then nodded. He issued a protective order: no more defamation, no use of my likeness in fundraisers, no standing on church steps with rehearsed pity. Platforms hosting falsehoods would be subpoenaed, exclusive possession reaffirmed, a restitution review set. Merrick added the insurance forgery and confession clip. The judge called it a pattern of coercion. Cornelius and Isolde left silent. I walked to the clerk, asked for 2 certified copies, one for my binder, one for my church. I said. She stamped them like punctuation. My thought for the viewers was simple: protection isn't drama, it's paperwork with teeth. Afternoon brought harder news for them. Dahlia texted from the credit union accounts frozen pending review. Cornelius tried a withdrawal. Teller declined. Compliance flagged suspected fraud at the motel. Isolde's card failed. Another worked once, then stopped at a storage facility. Their gate code blinked red non-payment lock. Pre-auction list. I wasn't there. But I could picture the corrugated door stuck shut, their hands empty. Dahlia's note rang in my ear. You keep receipts so you don't need revenge. Choices had closed that door, not curses. With Tariq, I went to the recorder's office. We re-recorded the trust with the new ruling. The clerk's stamp came down firm, sliding copies back across the counter like fresh bread. That evening at the church pavilion, I stood before neighbors and announced the Grigsby Porch Fund, a pot for seniors to cover filing fees, notarizations, an hour of legal counsel. Reverend Carson offered space. Bonnie Slate the newsletter banner. Tariq his first paycheck. I shared 3 lines like fridge magnets. Write names on deeds the way you write names on cakes, right or not at all. If love asks you to sign blind, it's not love. It's a pen with no ink. Quiet is a strategy, not surrender. Applause didn't roar. It hummed, warm and grateful. I felt the storm ease. Dusk found Cornelius at the sidewalk, Isolde behind him. No yelling now, just 2 weeks. Althea, a bridge. I handed him the same resource sheet: shelters, motels, aid lines date-stamped anew, mercy with edges. I said, this is what I can give. The rest is yours. Isolde opened her mouth. I raised a palm. Court said distance. I'm keeping it. Deputy Hargrove's car rolled slow by, presence enough. Cornelius took the sheet. They turned toward the bus stop. I locked the door soft, like tucking in a child. Night returned. On the porch, Tariq placed a new solar lantern, battery-powered piece. He joked. We flipped through the binder one last time. He asked, satisfied? Not satisfied. I said, settled. That's stronger. I left the stamped deed and my grandmother's fan beneath the lantern. Paper defended this home, but people kept it alive. Final note for those watching: if you're over 60, put your paperwork where your people can find it. That's love, too. The lantern flicked on. I went inside. The house exhaled. My burden was gone. My porch was my future.